Hi guys, my name is Anuj Jindal. Today we are going to discuss the first test of finance. The answers to first test of finance descriptive, which is a practice test. And we are not only going to discuss what has been written as a sample answer by me, but because I've been talking about inculcating a sense of empowerment where you can critically analyze and test your own writing your own paper. So the same will be followed here. I will be focusing upon what to write. I will be focusing upon how to write. I will be focusing upon why to write in a certain way, why not to write in a certain way. I will be discussing upon all the what's and how's and when's and why's, all these things which are normally the basis of questionings and confusions in your minds. Okay, तो वो सारी चीज़ें डिस्कस करेंगे related to these questions. And through this we will not only learn to the answer of these questions, we'll also try and automatically learn how to write better answers. Okay, how to write better answers, how to check your answers yourself, all those things will be learned automatically. Okay, so there are six questions. As per the format, you are required to write answers to two questions out of these three and two questions out of these three, 15 markers and 10 markers. They're not only relevant for RBI, in case you are preparing for UPSC, they're also relevant there, especially in the optionals of commerce and management. Okay, so they're relevant in both these papers simultaneously as well. So if you're appearing simultaneously, preparing simultaneously for UPSC, then also the method of writing these answers, what to check, what not to check, how to critically analyze your own answer, all those things will remain the same. So let us start. The first question is define the term banking and enumerate the functions of a bank. This year we saw that RBI asked very basic conceptual questions related to various topics in finance, ESI, and management, and that's what we are going to focus upon. Of course, कुछ ना कुछ current affairs उठाएंगे, but our primary objective is to first of all focus on the basics. Okay, so number one, define the term banking and enumerate the functions of a bank. This is our first question. तो इसमें keywords क्या है? Number one, the term banking, and number two, functions of a bank. Okay, so what do you write in the introduction? As I have already said and explained in the past as well, first of all, you identify the keywords. That is your first objective whenever you look at a question. Second is you decide what to write in the introduction. Okay, now there are two things that you can focus upon in the introduction. Number one, you can write what is the keyword about, or you can also talk about why are we discussing this. In case of questions which are purely out of current affairs, the why part becomes important at times, and at other times it also becomes important if you want to give a perspective. Okay, otherwise if you focus upon the what part, then you are satisfying the thirst of the examiner, of the checker, automatically, because that's what he cares about the most. Okay, so you tell them what a bank is, because we're talking about banking here. Define the term banking. So you talk about what banking is, and then you talk about what are the functions of a bank. Very, very simple question and very simple answer. The more simple you keep it, the better it is for you. Stick to the basics, stick to the academic books, stick to the academic style of writing. Okay, so you start with the introduction and you decide what is it that you want to write in the introduction. In the introduction here, you will be writing what is banking, what are functions of a bank, the basic division of functions of a bank, and then you will get into the body part where you will identify and explain the functions of a bank. Okay, and then will come the conclusion, where you can either give a way forward. There are two methods to writing a good conclusion. You can give a way forward, or you can also summarize whatever you have just mentioned. तो दो चीजें आप कर सकते हो. You can summarize or you can present a way forward. Okay, so let us start. In the introduction, as I said, we will be talking about what is banking. So banking can be defined as the business activity. Basic definition of banking: financial intermediary, the business activity of accepting money and then lending out this money in order to earn a profit. That is financial intermediary. You can also use the keyword in case you want to impress the examiner. However, with the passage of time, the activities covered by banking business have widened, and now various other services are also offered by banks. So, you've also mentioned this, that although the traditional definition of banking says that it is the activity of accepting deposits and then lending out loans, but the activities have expanded with passage of time. Now, what are the different parts in which functions of bank can be divided? Primary, secondary and utility functions. तो basic division हमने create किया. What is the purpose of this? The purpose of this is to structure our answer. Number one, structure our answer. बहुत ज़रूरी है कि आप अपने दिमाग में एक स्ट्रक्चर रखो. You keep a structure in your mind and you present a very well defined structure to the examiner as well, so that he also can visualize and create a structure in his own mind as to what are you thinking, what might be going on in your head when you wrote this answer. Very important, because this structure gives you फ्लो ऑटोमेटिकली. आपके आंसर को फ्लो मिल जाता है, आपके आंसर को एक स्मूथ वाटर लाइक फ्लो, जो हम यूपीएससी में बोलते हैं फ्लो होना चाहिए आंसर में. व्हाट इज दैट फ्लो? दैट कम्स ऑटोमेटिकली विद स्ट्रक्चर. ओके, so this is what we've done. We've structured our answer in the introduction itself by saying that the functions of bank can be divided into three parts: primary, secondary, and utility functions. And now we jump directly into the primary, secondary, and utility functions of bank. Primary function क्या होता है? Accepting deposits, granting loans and advances. And then we explain the bank collects deposits from the public. These deposits can be of different types, such as savings, fixed, current, recurring, etc., etc. Accepting deposits, granting loans, अलग अलग type के uh, different types of loans granted to different kind of people. That's what you write, right? The bank advances loans to business community and other members of the public. The rate charged is higher. How does it earn money? Because the rate charged is higher than what it pays on deposits. The difference is its profit. Okay, there are various types of bank loans: overdraft, cash credit, loans, discounting bills of exchange, etc. आपने different types of loans भी बता दिए. Okay, so these are the primary functions of a bank. Now let's jump directly into the secondary functions of bank. There is the agency function, where it acts as an agent of its customers. As an agent, it helps in transferring of funds, it helps in collection of checks, it helps in periodic payments through something called as ECS. You can boast a little and mention these keywords also. You also manage portfolio under investment banking and merchant banking function, and there are other agency functions, for example, acting as trustee, executive director, administrator on behalf of its clients. So ये सारे agency functions हैं where the bank acts on behalf of the client. And then there are utility functions. For example, locker facility हो गया, letter of credit हो गया, underwriting of shares under merchant banking, foreign exchange. Let's say you want to go to the US tomorrow, you go to your bank and ask them कि यार foreign exchange कराना है from money from rupee to from INR to dollars. The bank, if it has the facility, will be like, okay, deposit your INR or we'll take it directly from your account and we'll give you dollars. Okay. Social welfare programs like awareness campaigns, contributing towards priority sector lending, those are also utility functions of the bank. So this is how you divide, structure your answer and present a very academically sound answer to the examiner. Okay, don't try and run after current affairs to such an extent that you forget about the basics altogether. You can mention current affairs to certain extent in the introduction or in the conclusion, but try to stay away from the current affairs unless specifically asked in the body of the answer. Okay, with the evolution of financial technologies, functions of banks have expanded in their scope over a period of time. So I'm summarizing the same thing. That's what I started with. So it's a loop. It's called looping. That's what I'm doing here. Okay. So you start from point A, you let's say go to point B, then you go to point C, and then when you're at in the conclusion at point D, it is linked some way or the other to point A. So in this case, I said in the introduction that the uh, banking functions have expanded with passage of time, and now they include a lot of other utility and secondary functions, and that's what I'm saying. They've expanded in their scope over a period of time. Banks now provide various technological services. ये मैंने conclusion में डाल दिया because there was not enough space. If you want to expand your answer further, this can be your body as well. You can expand on this as well. New functions being performed by banks, technological functions, mobile banking, internet banking, debit card, credit card, online brokerage services, okay, uh, acting as PPIs at times. So all those are technological services that are being fulfilled by the banks. This can be a body as well, because I felt that the time and the space has run out. So let me introduce it and include it in the conclusion. So I'm giving a way forward that this is the future which is already started by the banks, and this is the area of expansion for banks at this point of time. Okay. As India moves towards a financially included nation, the scope and services provided the banking sector in India will only expand. Very simple summarizing the entire question's answer. Okay. Let's come to the second question. The question says, describe the origin and evolution of banking system in India. Very simple question. We can start with the origin of the banking system in India. That can be our introduction. So our introduction is clear. What is our introduction? The introduction is, what was the evolution of banking system in India? Okay, when and how and what was the evolution. Okay, and then in the body we talk about the entire phases, different phases. We divide it into phases, and then we talk about these phases one by one. And then in the conclusion we can give a way forward that what is the next phase which India is facing now, or which India is looking at this point of time. Okay. So I've started with modern banking system. Some of you might want to or might be enticed to start with an ancient banking system, how the concept of money evolved and came into being. But that is not very relevant. Think from the examiner's point of view. What would interest the examiner more? Writing about the evolution of money or writing about the evolution of modern banking system? Of course, writing about the evolution of modern banking system, how it all started, and the most important point or most important event in the modern banking system is what? Setting up of RBI. So, starting up with that, think from the examiner's point of view simultaneously and pick out the most important point that you feel can grab his attention. Important, grabbing attention at the same time. Relevancy is very important. The modern banking system in India can be said to have started with the setting up of RBI in 1935. Very simple statement, very small statement, no rocket science involved. The Banking Regulation Act was passed in 1949 with the aim of regulating scheduled banks in India. So I've mentioned two things. Number one, importance of the modern banking system through setting up of RBI. Number two, the passing of Banking Regulation Act, BR Act. Any statute or act is the uh, primary powering, primary, uh, electrifying force behind anything that we do in a nation. Everything is either backed by a statute or it is powerless. Okay, that is why statutes, laws are so important. Okay, because they give a permanency and stability to any activity. So the banking system as an activity has got permanency and stability because of Banking Regulation Act, because the Banking Regulation Act powers it. Okay, the evolution of banking system can be divided now. I've directly moved towards evolution into three phases. Phase 1 before independence, phase 2 1947 to 91, and phase 3 1991 onwards. Although we can say that we are entering into another phase, this can be a conclusion that we are entering into phase 4, wherein banking is moving very fast towards technological evolution or technological dependency. So fintech is becoming an inherent part of the banking system now. This can be phase 4. Let's in the next 1 decade we might start classifying it as a separate phase. So you can mention that in the conclusion as well. Phase 1, pre-independence. Before 1947 there were about 600 banks in India. So a fact is normally mentioned when you want to impress the examiner with certain specific numbers. There are 3-4 things that you can keep in mind while writing an answer. Structure तो मैंने आपको बता दिया है. Number 2, usage of facts at the right point. Do not try and overuse or use facts at the wrong place. Number 2, credibility to your answer by using certain report, by using certain committees recommendation. Okay, by using certain act, the name of an act, just like I used the name of the act here, Banking Regulation Act, to give my answer more credibility. Okay, so these are two important things that you can include in your answers to give your answer more power, more punch. Okay, punch फ्लेरी लैंग्वेज से नहीं आता है, पंच रैंडम चीज़ें लिखने थे या फिर कंट्रोवर्शियल चीज़ें लिखने से नहीं आता है. Punch comes from writing relevant things. Okay, facts, credibility, very important. Majority of the banks existing in India were regional in nature, so I've directly come into the problems which gave rise to phase 2. With small sizes and high rate of failures, banking at this point of time was limited to urban areas and for people belonging to higher class in society. Banking as a service was non-existent for poor people and middle class. Okay, and that is what gave rise to the gist of phase 2, and that is what I'm going to. So this is how I create and maintain the flow. I mentioned the problems existing in phase 1 and how was it tried to be resolved in phase 2. The phase of banking industry after independence is often termed as the revolutionary phase, where the primary focus was shifted from urban to rural areas and from retail segments towards industry. So I've answered the question that I raised in the first point, wherein I mentioned that these are the problems being faced in phase 1. Now in phase 2, in the revolutionary phase, these were targeted. Okay, the banking industry in this phase, it's not phase, it's PHASE, was divided into three parts: developmental financial institutions, commercial banks, and non banking financial companies. I've given it a structure. I've told them, okay, the banking system in this phase was divided into these many parts. And then that is how I expand my answer and make my answer long enough to be interesting and lengthy at the same time, because I have to write 400-500 words at least. Okay, in order to make that happen, I have given it a structure now. Okay, this was the purpose. How was this resolved? By setting up or by dividing the banking industry into three types: development financial institutions, commercial banks, and NBFIs. The primary purpose of all the three institutions are as follows. And then I talk about development financial institutions. I've already talked about it in the videos and explained what was the primary focus and structure of setting up of development financial institutions. Then I talk about commercial banks, and then I in commercial banks, because there was nationalization, I talk about nationalization which happened in phase 2. And then I talk about non-banking financial institutions and what was their primary role in the banking system. Okay, various unique banking models were also adopted, for example, regional, rural banks, local area banks. So you can mention about this as well. This all happened with the target of financial inclusion in mind in phase 2 of the banking industry. And then we have phase 3, which included wherein the major role was privatization of banking industry, disinvestment of existing banks, and better governance of public sector banks. Okay, so this was the primary reforms which started in after phase 3. Okay, conversion of government backed development financial institutions into market financed development financial institutions and technological innovation. तो मैंने टेक्नोलॉजिकल इनोवेशन को भी मेंशन किया है बिकॉज इट्स सच एन इम्पॉर्टेंट पार्ट. एक मेंशन उसका बनता है. यू कैन राइट मोर ऑन इट इफ यू वांट टू. यू विल हैव इनफ स्पेस. आप लिख सकते हैं उसके बारे में. Since 1991, there have been multiple rounds of private licenses being given. At the same time, many public sector banks have been privatized. Yes, the era of government backed development financial institutions was dropped completely in 2011, following which DFIs uh, were merged. DFIs emerged as market led and market financed institutions. Okay, and then I am concluding, as I said, the evolution of the with the evolution of another phase of banking. And how did I prove that? I proved that through fourth industrial revolution. Okay, wherein internet is playing a major role, which means technologically advanced or technologically enabled financial system is expanding and evolving. तो इस तरह से मैंने उसको लिंक किया है. So that is how I maintain a flow, give a way forward. This is what you mean by giving a way forward in the conclusion. This is what I've done. Okay, I hope this is clear. Next question पे आते हैं. Question 3, 15 marker again. Explain the instruments provided by the money and capital markets to both investors and issuers. Instruments provided by the money and capital market. to both investors and issuers. तो मनी मार्केट में क्या क्या इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स है? वेरी सिंपल क्वेश्चन, दिस इज द कीवर्ड हेयर. What are the instruments used in the money market? What are the instruments used in the capital market? In short, this is our question. तो कीवर्ड क्या है यहाँ पर? इंस्ट्रूमेंट है नंबर वन, मनी मार्केट है नंबर टू, कैपिटल मार्केट है नंबर थ्री. These are the major keywords. I would rather focus on these two keywords because instruments I will be writing in detail in the body. So there's no point in introducing it in the introduction. I would rather focus on introducing money and capital markets in the introduction. Okay, that is what I've done here. Money market is the market for borrowing and lending for short term. Capital market is the market for borrowing and lending of long term funds for investment and expansionary functions of the economy. Various instruments are used in money and capital markets to fulfill the needs of participating entities. बहुत सिंपल सा एक छोटे छोटे सेंटेंसेस हैं, बहुत सिंपल सा एक introduction बनाया है, and then I jump directly into the body wherein I talk about instruments used in the money market number one, and then instruments used in the capital market. I'm not going to talk in detail about these because I've already explained these and we've already talked about them in detail in the questions on money market, in the chapter on money market and capital market. Okay, so you can talk about these different kinds of instruments, and then how do you conclude with the deepening of financial markets? New instruments, that is what I've concluded with. New instruments like real estate investment trust, infrastructure investment trust are emerging. These instruments are helping in converting illiquid assets into liquid financial assets. With financial inclusion, depth of money market and capital market is also expanding every year. Very simple conclusion, way forward दे दिया है कि जितने भी हमने इंस्ट्रूमेंट देखे ये तो हैं ही, these exist, but new instruments are also emerging because of deepening and expansion of the money market and capital market. I hope this is clear. बहुत ही सिंपल सा क्वेश्चन है, बहुत ही सिंपल सा आंसर लिखना है आपको. That is how you can get maximum marks. Now let's come to the 10 markers. They are supposed to be shorter comparatively from the 15 markers. More relevant from UPSC perspective. Why? Because you have to write shorter answers in UPSC. Okay. RBI may, of course, equally relevant because this is the length that you follow for 10 markers. The question is, under priority sector lending, explain the finance mandatorily required to be provided to the priority sector by various types of banks in India. Very factual question, very simple and factual question. It's a lottery actually if these kinds of questions come in the examination. Why? It is asking you directly कि भाई provisions बताओ. That is what it is saying. In short, it is saying, tell me the provisions of priority sector lending targets that are given by RBI to various kinds of banks. That is what it is asking. That is what we write. So first of all, we explain priority sector lending because that is the best keyword here, right? Keyword हमने identify किया. What is PSL? Different types of banks in India. We can mention different types of banks which are involved here or different types of targets. We can mention anything, but the core is priority sector lending. Okay. So the introduction here says banks are required to provide a part of their credit to particular set of borrowers. This is done to promote development of all regions and sections equally. It is popularly called as rationing of credit. Sectors like agriculture, MSMEs, education, housing, weaker sections, social infrastructure, etc. are covered under priority sector lending. Different kinds of banks in India have different targets with respect to PSL. Very simple question, very simple introduction, very direct introduction. What is PSL? Rationing of credit, right? Why is it done? Financial inclusion, financial expansion. Which sectors are included? A, B, C, D, E. Okay. Targets, ये अभी दे देते हैं targets. Okay. Number one, domestic commercial banks have these targets. मैंने summarize कर दिया because you cannot write a table when it comes to priority sector, when it comes to any question because you are supposed to be writing them online. तो आप table नहीं बना सकते हो. That is why I have covered it in पैराग्राफ फॉर्मेट. डोमेस्टिक कमर्शियल बैंक्स की टारगेट क्या है, रीजनल रूरल बैंक्स की टारगेट क्या है, स्मॉल फाइनेंस बैंक्स की टारगेट क्या है, प्राइमरी अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स विच हैव बीन रिसेंटली इंक्लूडेड under PSL, what are the targets? If targets are not met, then what happens? That is the conclusion. Flow देखो, flow दे रहे हैं. पहले हमने बता दिया कि what is PSL, what are the targets of different kinds of banks. If the targets are not met, then what happens? Okay, banks have to transfer difference to RADF as decided by RBI. The overall shortage or excess is computed at the end of the year by taking average of PSL target. Banks are paid interest on their contribution, which is less than what banks could earn by lending to priority sectors. Thus, banks prefer to complete their targets. Very simple question, very straightforward answer. कुछ भी इधर उधर की बातें नहीं करी. Let's come to the fifth question. Explain the benefits and threats emanating from financial technology firms. Now, I would like to bring a specific point here. No answer which is covering the basics, of course. ऐसा नहीं कि इंग्लिश का पेपर है उर्दू लिख के आ गए. No answer which is covering the basics, whatever is asked in the question, which is answering the question itself, is completely incorrect or wrong, and no answer is completely correct. In Whenever you're writing a descriptive answer, please keep it in mind that you can better your answer, but there is no perfect answer and there is no imperfect answer. So this means that whatever I am writing, ऐसा नहीं है कि ये रट के चले जाओगे तो नंबर आ जाएंगे. You will never get marks because these questions are not going to be asked in the interview, in the examination. Sorry, okay. I'm going to give you a set of 100, 200 questions. From them, one or two questions might come in the exam, but the other questions will be completely new. That's what happens in all the papers, especially in government examinations. So you have to be ready for that. And in order to prepare well for that, you have to understand how am I writing questions, answers, not what am I writing specifically. Because what am I writing is completely in sync with what I'm teaching in the course, right? बेनिफिट्स एंड थ्रेट्स एमिनेटिंग फ्रॉम फाइनेंशियल टेक्नोलॉजी फर्म्स. बहुत सिंपल क्वेश्चन है, फिनटेक का क्वेश्चन डाला है मैंने ये. सो व्हाट आर द benefits of fintech, what are the disadvantages of fintech, that is the question. So first of all, you explain what is fintech, definition बताओगे, otherwise it is irrelevant. Keyword हमने identify किया fintech, so our introduction is to be what is fintech, okay, and our body is going to be okay, what are the benefits of fintech, what are the disadvantages of fintech. That's it. Question khatam hai, answer. Okay. Fintech is a term used to describe financial technology firms. These are companies that provide financial services through software and other technology mediums, includes anything from mobile payment apps to cryptocurrency. We consider them to be fintech enabled firms. Broadly, fintech describes any company using internet, mobile devices, software technology to perform or connect with financial services. What are the examples? Bharat Pay, Paytm, Policy Bazaar, Razorpay, etc. Okay. Then you mention the advantages. Potential to transform financial landscape where customers will be able to choose from broader set of alternatives at competitive prices. Financial inclusion, efficiency, personalized services. Basic keywords use करके advantages बता दिए. Disadvantages, cyber frauds, parallel cryptocurrency, exploitation of customers. Basic disadvantages बता दिए. Okay. And then because you want to be positive, because it's an evolving area, so you mention with all these threats, financial technology remains the sole force to make financial inclusion a reality in the near future. तो ये इसका ऑब्जेक्टिव है, ये इसका पोटेंशियल है. ओके, फाइनेंशियल टेक्नोलॉजीज हैव द potential to make financial inclusion a reality in the very near future, to speed up the process of financial inclusion. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. Last question. What are the merits and demerits of having fixed income securities in your portfolio? Very simple question. You talk about fixed income securities. What are fixed income securities? This is your introduction. Very simple. Keyword identify kiya, fixed income securities identify kiya. What are those? Then you talk about merits and demerits. This becomes your body. I hope this is clear. Structure हमारे दिमाग में clear हो गया. Now let's jump to the answer. What are fixed income securities? That is what I mentioned here. Fixed income securities are investments which provide regular income in the form of fixed dividends and fixed coupon rate or interest rate. Various instruments in money and capital market, दोनों markets use किए. Because I'm talking about fixed income securities, I'm talking about the markets, the financial markets, and financial markets में दोनों आती हैं. You have money and capital markets. So do not slip out on any of these markets. Okay. In capital market and money market, in the form of equity, debt, for example, preference shares, bonds, debentures, derivative provide a fixed income in the form of interest and dividends. Merits and demerits of investing in fixed income securities. Limited return मिलता है आपको. Demerit पहले मैंने डिस्कस किया है. रिटर्न में कम हो सकता है. Especially in the case of inflation, your return might actually turn negative. Risk of default, also called as credit risk, liquidity risk, and interest rate risk. Technical, I have stuck to the technical aspects related to the problems inherent with the fixed income securities. ऐसा नहीं है कि मैं कुछ अपने मन से बना रहा हूँ. I have stuck to the basics. Technical doesn't mean that it is not basic. टेक्निकल येट बेसिक। जो बुक में आप पढ़ोगे तो यही मेंशन्ड मिलेगा आपको। व्हाट आर द प्रॉब्लम्स inherent in fixed income securities? Liquidity risk, interest rate risk, credit risk, limited returns. What are the merits? Fixed return, of course, it's a very big merit, especially for people who are looking for a fixed return from their investment. Coverage of inflation, very important. Diversification from stock market risk, capital conservation or preservation, very important. So these are the merits and demerits that I've mentioned here. So this brings an end to our test on finance, the 6 questions answer. Please go through these answers only when you are done and once you're done with writing the test. Otherwise, you will just end up copying whatever I have explained here and you will not be able to learn anything new. Okay. I hope this session was useful. All the best, guys. Take care. Bye bye.